Okay, so first of all, I'm introduce myself. I'm Ellie Morris. I'm chairman of HOB Rehovot. For those of you who aren't familiar, HOB is Hitachut Olei Britannia, with British Immigrants Association, and we're delighted to see everybody who's here tonight, particularly people who don't normally come to our HOB things. So welcome to you all. And before I introduce our speaker tonight, there's just a couple of things coming up I want to tell you about. We were due this month to go on a tour of Givat Brenner, Kibbutz Givat Brenner, which obviously we had to postpone, but we will be doing it at some point in the future. We simply don't know when, but we haven't cancelled it, we've simply postponed it. So that's the first thing. The other thing is on Motzei Shabbat, November the 4th, the national organization is having a Zoom with Professor David Newman, who is the professor of politics and government at Ben Gurion University, specializes in borders, has spent a lifetime looking at Gaza, and was even involved in some of the peace negotiations in the past. And he will be giving us a Zoom talk entitled Gaza, Past, Present and Future. That's on November the 4th on Zoom. It'll be 8 o'clock in the evening on Zoom. So that's definitely worthwhile. And the other thing that we have planned is on November the 23rd, we've got Dr. Helen Fry from London, who is a historian specializing in intelligence in the world wars. And she has a new book coming out about women in intelligence in the 2 world wars. It's just about to be published, and she will be giving us a presentation about that on, I believe it's a Thursday, November 23rd. Yes, it is Thursday. Okay. All right, so now let's welcome our speaker for tonight, Jill Shames. Those of you who had pleasure of seeing her presentation about 18 months ago when she shared with us her experience in Moldova, because Jill is a clinical social worker specializing in trauma and volunteers with United Hatzalah. She's also, by the way, an advanced black belt in karate, I believe. So no messing with Jill. And Jill is going to talk to us tonight about coping strategies in times of stress. And as I said, she's a volunteer with United Hatzalah. And what we have decided to do is to HOB Rehovot to make a donation to United Hatzalah. We haven't charged for this evening, but if anybody would like to make a donation of any amount, we would be happy to add it to our HOB Rehovot donation to United Hatzalah. Okay, so now I'm going to throw over the screen, not the floor, the screen to Jill. Thank you, Jill.
Okay. All right, so we have some people now. Should I assume that the people I can't see are the ones who are the most stressed? Is that what that should be my, okay.
Well, Shirley, it doesn't say that her camera's switched off, doesn't say anything. Shirley, are you there?
I'm here, but I don't know how to get the camera. Hang on.
Okay, I know you're there. And Susan, are you there? And David?
I finally done it.
No. Never mind.
Okay. Well, what's important is not whether is not so much whether I see you, but that we're actually going to be doing some stuff because and we're going to talk in just a second about why we're not just going to be talking, because most people have been probably dealing with their stress by talking. That's one way to do it, but I want to kind of explain why it is that that's not all I do when I'm working with people with acute stress. Now, I would say that a lot of us are suffering. Is there anybody here who is not stressed at all and is just having a really relaxed time? Okay, so good. We are now in a script.
Oh, that's your put hand up.
Yeah. When I do the work that I do for Hatzalah, I am not a choveshet. I'm not a medic. I came close to taking the course, but it's been a little overwhelming, so I haven't done that. I'm in the psychotrauma unit, and so we're used to going out on calls here in Israel. We get calls every day for all kinds of emergencies that bring along with them a traumatic element, a psychologically traumatic element. Oh, look at me, I'm in a big screen now. All right, so let's say let me bring this up so you guys can rate yourselves, because all I just said to you was, what are you basically, are you relaxed and just, you know, having a great relaxing time? And everybody agrees that that's not where anybody is. But one of the things that I think is really helpful, and it's actually a piece of advice, is to kind of put your stress on a scale. Really take a look at it and see where it measures. And we usually can use a 10-point scale to do that, but you know, with kids, I don't use anything more than a 5-point scale. It's the same thing, it's just half the size. If you take the 0 is you are absolutely relaxed and just loving life exactly as it is, you wouldn't change a thing. And if 10 was you're completely freaked out as you've ever been, try to figure where you are on that scale right now, right? And I'm not saying where have you been over the last several days. I try to get into your body this moment and get a sense of where you are this moment, and see how that affects you, just to kind of just looking at that and seeing where you go, and then seeing where you can put yourself on that scale. I'll just give you a few seconds. You can pick up on it. Okay, that's not necessarily something you have to share with anybody, but I want you to notice it, because we're going to be doing some techniques that are going to be, the goal of them is going to be seeing if we can get you to drift down some on that scale. And if you know where you started, then you'll have an appreciation for where you end up and what might be working for you and what might not. All right, so let me see. I'm going to go to share screen because I'm very adroit. Okay, now I need to put it on full screen. I know on presentation. Oh, isn't this exciting? Ta-da! Okay, this is another way. I actually don't relate to numbers. That's just not my thing. So all the number people, if I ask you to put it on a 10-point scale, you guys go, oh yeah, okay. I like the smiley face. I like the faces. If you are, by the way, if you're related,
could everyone see it? Because I'm seeing it on the second screen, so I'm not sure what everyone else is seeing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yes, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a row of you guys, and I'm seeing the main screen. Is that what most people are seeing? Okay, cool. All right, if you take a look at that scale, it might give you a better sense of, this is only a 6-point scale. See, the numbers don't mock, you see? So if you were to put yourself in one of these categories, and when you look at this flow, this can be really helpful. And I actually produced, I don't have them, you know, I actually produced bracelets that you can kind of print them out and, you know, put it around your wrist, or you can take something like this and sort of stick it on the wall in the miklat or the mamad, particularly if you're together with other people and you can all kind of take a look at that and go, well, let me see where I am on this scale. And just taking a look at that often will start to relieve, it'll start to bring down the level, because you've taken something that's sort of amorphous and you've defined it. And then once you know where you are, you can start to think about what you might want to do about it. I don't want to unmute myself. Okay. This is, I just wanted to give you something a little bit more concrete here about what's happening in your brain as your stress or anxiety level goes up, and how does it affect people. So if you take a look at the brain that says unstressed over it, and you can see that the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that helps you think clearly, and make decisions and speak for yourself and define things and make order out of things, that basically there's an easy flow between that front part of the brain and the rest of the brain. And what happens when you're stressed is that I usually call it the smoke alarm, but I seem to be aging myself. So But that's okay. With this crew, you know what a smoke alarm is, right? Do they call it something else in Britain? Thank God, because I've already done the torch and the boot thing, and yeah. Anyway, so when the smoke alarm, you have a smoke alarm sort of thing working in the lower part of your brain. We often blame the amygdala, but it's actually, there are more mechanisms involved. The amygdala is this almond-shaped part of the brain that, and what's happening over there is it's sort of constantly screening to see if anything might be a danger to you. And all human beings have this amygdala working like that. Some people's amygdalas are more sensitive than others, and it's one of the reasons that some people are they're more anxious in general. In any case, when that part of the brain starts pumping, it basically shuts down a lot of the functions of the prefrontal cortex, because the brain can't. Actually, the prefrontal cortex doesn't help a lot if you're in a survival situation. You don't want to be sorting things out, figuring out what to say, going over all the things you learned about. You want to be able to just move and get things done and get out of there. So that's why it works. And what happens is that it makes it very, very hard to function. And when people are in situations like the one we're in right now, is anybody else having trouble functioning, or am I the only one? Yeah, last week I couldn't remember. No, it wasn't last week. See, I'm already doing it. The first week after this horrible situation occurred, I couldn't remember what day it was. It took me about a week to start remembering what day it was. And that's not at all unusual when somebody's experiencing traumatic stress, which I think we are right now as a country. I'm going to show you this very briefly so that we can be clear about what we're talking about when we talk about traumatic stress. This is when the kind of thing that I'm sent out from the psychotrauma unit to deal with is an ASR, an acute stress response. And an acute stress response is normal. If you can see, it happens to just about anyone. If somebody doesn't have an acute stress response under certain circumstances, we worry that there's something wrong with them. Something's not working right. And when that happens, it could be hearing of a death. It could be, it could be all kinds of things different. Certainly the situation we're in now, that would trigger just about anybody. And that happens for about maybe up to 3 days. But the golden hour for catching it for people like me is in the first couple of hours. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to catch the people who are having an ASR, but it's already turning into a disorder. It's going to be more acute, and that is something that could turn into PTSD in the future. So our goal essentially is to prevent PTSD. Okay, we will be looking in a little, at the very end of this, I'm going to show you some of the symptoms that are normal responses, but they're supposed to go away. And that's the basic idea. You can see here in the middle, it says, we have some statistics on how the percentages of people who have certain kinds of experiences who end up with what we call an acute stress disorder. And you can see that it goes from here, it's like the low is a mild traumatic brain injury or a motor vehicle accident. If anyone's ever been in a motor vehicle accident, it is that percentage of people have such a strong response to it that they go into this category. So it's a very stressful situation. And then if you look, witnessing a mass shooting brings you all the way up to a third. So you can see why we've been very, very active during this period of time, which is why I don't have an introductory screen, because I've been very, very active. Okay, so this is what's happening. I find this really helpful. If you look, we have this central area called the window of tolerance. We're going to be moving into the doing stuff very soon. You're going to have this in the background just to have it in your minds, okay? The window of tolerance is where you can still think, you can learn, you can be reasonable, you can be hopeful, you can understand, you can, you're functioning at a good place to where you want to be. When stress comes in, we can go in one of two directions. We either go up toward the aggressive, reactive, agitated. If you look at that, I like to think of it a volcano. You just sort of going boom, and that sort of wipes out your ability to be able to be reasonable and to learn anything new and to follow instructions and all kinds of stuff. And some people go the other way. They shut down. And those people, they're sort of, they don't feel as if they're there with you. They're not connected. They become disassociated. And either of those two directions is normal, but they're not places you want to stay. So the work that we do is to try and help people make their way through whatever their reaction is and get themselves back into the window of tolerance. So, we're on the practical stuff. Yay. All right. This is to remind me of what I wanted to talk about, but I can also send it. Send it out and you guys can have it. I wanted to do some techniques with you that work very well when you're starting to feel stressed. And I will tell you not to believe anything I tell you. So what does that mean? That means that you have your own stress meter. Okay. We're going to try some of these techniques. I very much recommend that you try them. And then you're going to test it and see what here is helpful to you. If something's helpful to you, then you should adopt it and you can have it on your shelf when you need it. And if it's not helpful to you, forget it. Okay? Because everybody's nervous system is different. So we don't always know what will work. But I also think it's worthwhile to look at the ones that don't appeal to you because they might be helpful to somebody else who's in the miklat or the mamad with you. Okay, so we're going to start with breathing. How many of you do any sort of breathing practice to try to, people have said that you should breathe to stay calm. Is there anybody besides me who does that? I'm sure there's more, but I can't see you because I have this big screen on. I think I'm going to take it down so I can see you guys now. Let's see if I unshare. Now I can see more of you. Good. And I want to get this into gallery view there. Now I can see everybody. Okay. So we have some breathers. I see Stephen is a breather. I see Joe is a breather. Okay. I see Linda is a breather. And I'm sure there are people who breathe who are also not, we can't see them. Is there anybody who has not breathed today at all? No, because you wouldn't be here. So I'm very glad you breathed today. But we're going to do a very specific kind of breathing. I mean, there's lots of ones that help. So it's not, it's not like you have to do it a particular way. And you guys maybe we'll talk later about some of the techniques that some of you use. But one of them that I find really easy to teach and to visualize is called, I was going to say it in Hebrew. But you'd understand me. It's flower candle breathing. That's what they call it in Hebrew. They call it perach ner. Perach ner. And what you do is you can do this dramatically, or you can do this in your, however. What you want to do is you want to imagine, use your imagination, imagine that you have in your hand a giant, fragrant flower. It's a wonderful flower that nobody's allergic to, for those of you who know about that. And what you want to do here is you want to breathe in, you want to really take in the scent. So you're going to breathe it in one time. You're going to breathe a little bit more. And you're just going to hold that wonderful scent. And then you're going to put the flower aside and imagine there's 64 candles on a cake. You're going to blow them out. There you go. Okay. Now I say 64 because that's how many I'd have to blow out. You can just think of one giant candle, if that makes sense. Okay. So if you do that twice or 3 times in a row, that's it. You don't have to go around breathing like that for the rest of the day. I hear lots of good breathing going on. Yeah, I don't see too many flowers, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it again. So you've got this wonderful giant flower, and you breathe in a little bit more, and you hold it a little bit at the flower side. Blow it out. Really blow it out. Wow, because yeah, it's a lot of candles, right? Okay. Yeah, I see somebody over there. I see somebody. Very easy to teach. Oh, well, we got real flowers, but can they, I'm only worried that there might be someone allergic on the screen. That's the only problem. So pick a flower. Okay. So the question is, what is it about breathing? Well, if you remember, I showed you a picture of the brain, and we talked about the amygdala and the lower part of the brain. Okay, the parts of that lower part of the brain that is so reactive when we experience stress is in charge of most of the things that it's in charge of are things we have no control over, like we have very little control over, like our pulse or blood pressure, whether our gut is actually working, that kind of stuff. But there is one thing that we definitely have control over that it also has, it's kind of overlaps. Because if we had to think to ourselves, oh, I need to breathe now, every time we needed to breathe, that's all we would ever be thinking about. Or we would just, forget to breathe, and that would be the end. So we have an automatic breathing pattern, and we also have a voluntary breathing pattern. And what happens is when we do this kind of breathing voluntarily, it gives a signal to the part of I'm getting a Hebrew and an autonomic nervous system. It gives it the signal that we are in control of the situation. If we're taking a nice, deep, slow breath and everything, so your whole system sort of starts to tune down. So it's not woo-woo, it's real science. It actually works. If you don't feel that it works for you, then you're better off turning to something else. But there's nothing special about the particular kind of breathing. Okay, so we have flower. Now I'm doing it again. Flower candle breathing. Okay, well, let's see. All right, so we have a couple more. Let's see a butterfly. Okay, so butterfly. Butterfly is a combination of movement and breathing. Okay, this way you don't have to know how to do a lot, and you can do it in your seat. But if you're in a seat, I would recommend it'll be easier for you to move if you move a little bit further on your seat so that your legs are a little bit more free. And if you're leaning back, you may find it more difficult. So if you're just using your own body to sit up. And what we're doing here is you're going to imagine your arms are like butterfly wings. And we're going to close down, just like you want to close down your body as small as it can get. And then you're going to open it up. And when you open it up, usually you'll want to breathe. You just want to take in all that oxygen, and you can blow out as you close it. And you can open it. And you can float that closed. I'm going to do it one more time because it feels good, and I just don't care if you like it or not. So there you go. Okay, that's one kind of butterfly. Okay, and that's movement and breathing together. But I'm going to show you another kind of butterfly, which we actually use something like it as it's a technique called bilateral stimulation. Anybody ever heard of EMDR? It's an eye movement treatment for people who have been traumatized. Wow. Oh boy, this is fun. I get to explain to most people. I know I see a few flapping hands there, but the idea of EMDR is it does something that seems to integrate the brain, the parts of the brain that are kind of, I'm going to say disintegrated. When a person experiences trauma, we don't remember trauma. We don't remember these. And when you're experiencing stress, you're already on the scale. Okay, you're heading toward. It's a form of trauma on a low flame. What happens is our memories tend to be broken up. so that you tend to remember sensory things, all of them separately, as if they were put in separate compartments. And often it'll, for people who are experiencing traumatic memories, flashbacks, that kind of thing, what's happening is their brain has not integrated them in such a way that they realize that it realizes that it's in the past, that it's not something that's happening at the moment. It is something that happened to you already. And so it's not in the past memory, it's in the part, a lot of it is in the part of the brain that's present memory, as if it's happening now. So one of the things, and I cannot tell you exactly how it works, nobody knows exactly how it works, but it's been very carefully studied, and I've used it in the field, so I can tell you, is to do some stimulation that uses both sides of the body. Okay, and the way that we often teach it is by making a butterfly with your hands. I'm just sort of joining my thumbs together like this, and you can put your hands this way. That's not the only way to do it. So you want to turn your hands over so your palms are facing your body. Yeah, and you start. For those of you who do tapping, this is not from that world, but it's from it works too. You want to make it. It's kind of quick. That's right. And you should be able, you should feel the tapping. It should feel like, it shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't be hard. And it usually takes when I've seen it in the field, it takes, whoa, I'm already feeling it now. It takes a little while. If you have to stop and shake out your hands, you can do that. And you can do it again. You can also do this for someone else in a slightly different way. I can't show you on somebody else because I'm the only one here. I'd have to do it on my dog. But for those of you who are in pairs, you can do it by tapping on a person's legs or on their arms. And if you're in a situation where you don't want to touch them for one reason or another, you can use, you don't have to use your hands. You can use pencils. And you just do that same thing, two separate sides of the body. For some reason, it seems to help the brain integrate those thoughts and put them in the proper context. When you meet somebody who's traumatized and you talk to them close to the moment or in the first few hours, you'll see that if they try to recall their memories, they tend to remember they remember these shards of things rather than a whole memory. And one of the things we're trying to do is help them make that integration. And then you can do it for yourself. And it also would work. It also, you know, if you're sitting in the miklat or you're sitting in the mamad and you're kind of feeling that the scale has gone up, give that a try. Just do it as relaxed a way as you possibly can. And again, you can do it for other people around you. Now, remember, I told you not to believe anything I tell you. So it doesn't matter what I'm telling you. You'll try it. Check your own scale. And see where you are and see if you can, if by doing things like this, you can get yourself down on the scale, even if it's a half a point, because a half a point is worth a lot on the stress scale. Okay, so now we have this flower candle breathing and we have this butterfly. We have the other butterfly. That feels wonderful. So for those of you who want to give that a shot at some point, give that a shot. I had a social worker today. I did a martial arts thing on Zoom for a bunch of social workers. And one of them wrote to me afterwards to say she didn't realize that she hadn't moved since this horrible event happened on Simchat Torah. And I think a lot of us are holding our bodies really, really tight because when we get stressed, we do that. So any kind of movement helps to release some of that energy. And that's part of our goal. Okay, so let's see. Do I have anything else to say? Oh, yeah, I was saying about movement. Now, I picked out these two little pictures, but it doesn't much matter what it is you do. If you're taking walks, if you're in an enclosed room, even just just lifting up your knees if you're sitting on a chair. Here's a game. We can play a game. Let me take this off for a second. I'm just having so much fun turning it on and off. Okay. Let's play a game. You ready? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. When I tell you to lean forward, you lean forward. And if I tell you to lean back, you lean back. And if I tell you to lean right, you lean right. I want to see you lean right. Okay, so I have to lean left to get you to lean right. Okay, that's going to be fun for me. And then if I tell you to lean left, no, great. Okay, you ready? Lean back. Lean right. Lean left. Lean forward. Good, you guys are good at this. Okay. All right, so here, we're going to turn your brain on. You ready? Whatever I tell you to do the opposite. Oh my God, I saw the light bulbs going on. Okay. You ready? And wait a minute, what should I do? Oh no, I should do what I say and you should do the opposite. Okay. Now I confused myself. Okay. I'm going to say lean forward, and what are you going to do? Yes, back. Very good. I'm going to lean back, and what are you going to do? Good. Lean left. Oops, I forgot. I'm the opposite of you. Lean right. Lean back. Lean forward. And in the middle. Now, you know that if you are really stressed, you won't be able to do that. Because did you feel your brains turn on when you did that? Okay, but even those, no, that involved no brains at all. All right. Well, anything that you choose to do, that's movement. And for those of you who are parents or grandparents, often we won't do it for ourselves. If you have younger people in the room with you, so almost any of us would do it for them, and they need it. They need us to move because they need to move. And if we sit still and in our when we close our bodies up, they won't do that. They'll just go bananas. So if they're going bananas, you go bananas. That'll work very well. And let us see, what was the last thing I had on here? Oh, I remember. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Okay, so this is a technique, a grounding technique that we use. And you can give it a try. Okay, so now here's how we do it. Let's see if we're going to follow the rules. Okay, I want you to find 5 things around you that are blue. 5 things that are blue. Okay, 1. Let's see, I'm looking 2. Something blue. 3, 4, oh, 5. Okay, no problem for me. I'm in the library. Those of you who have books behind you, you'll find all these colors, no problem. I can see them. I'm going to count yours. Okay, and then you want to try to find 4, try to hear 4 things. 4 things you can hear. I'm hearing tinnitus. Okay, that's 1. Okay. What else can you hear? Can you hear your computer? Yeah. Can you hear anything from outside? Maybe cars, dogs barking? My dog's not barking. That's not helping. I only found 3 things so far. Oh, I think I can hear the light even. I have a little light here that's making a sound, okay? And then you find, yeah, you're still working on it? Still working on it? Okay, so you find 3 things, then you're going to find, oh no, we did 4 things. Then you're going to find 3 things that you can, which senses have I not gotten to? Things you can feel. Things you can feel. Can you feel the temperature of the room? Can you feel your bottom on the surface where you're sitting? Can you feel the bottom of your feet? You know, if you can't feel something, you can put your arm on something and then you'll be able to feel it, or your hand on something. Okay. What are we doing when we're doing all these things? Yeah, there's something. There you go. That's the user family. I know.
Grounding.
This is grounding, because what happens is you're turning on your senses. When you use your senses, that's what grounds you. Because when you're using your senses, you are in the present moment. You're not in the past and you're not in the future. You're not thinking what will be, what might be, and you're not thinking about what was. your senses are working, they bring you right back. So keep that in mind. Remember, that's with the flower and this candle also. Even though you're not actually using your sense, you're using your imaginary sense, it turns on the same parts of the brain. Okay? So those are all techniques that can really help when you're starting to feel a little bit lost in stress. I wanted to bring you practical stuff, but I also want to hear from you about what kind of things that you've been doing to try to manage the stress that you're feeling, and what if you have any questions about certain kinds of situations that I may not have the answers to, but I'm willing to, we can all suffer together. That's fine.
You want to unmute everybody, Steve? Then okay, Valerie.
Well, everyone can unmute themselves.
Okay, Valerie, you have a question?
Exercise.
Yeah, I have to exercise every day, otherwise I go out of my mind. So it's very important. But what I can say is, the other thing you really need to add to your exercise is chemla atzmit, self-compassion. Because yes, it's important to exercise, but it's also important to not be judgmental of yourself, because you may not have enough time, you might have a little less energy. Even if you had a target, you have to try to be as forgiving as you can. Your brain, your nervous system is in much higher gear than usual. So you are working harder all the time. So you may not be able to accomplish what you were able to accomplish before. Okay, so be kind. If you're not sure how to be kind to yourself, I find that it really helps me to put my hand on my heart. And for some reason that I seem to soften when I do that. So I don't know if that, I'm very kinesthetic, so I really feel things, but whatever might work for you. For some people, it's a certain phrase that you teach yourself. And when like, I don't know what it would be. Whatever. Does anybody have an idea? What kind of phrases could you say to yourself?
I'm okay. I'm doing my best.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm okay. I'm doing my best. Just do your best.
I was also going to say, turn the TV off.
Yeah, let's talk about the minuses. Okay. TV watching I don't know. I watch I don't have the TV on a lot. And generally when I do, I'm watching Netflix or something. So that's helpful. But I also go onto YouTube and I can see all kinds of things. And what I've been reminding people of is the more senses you use, and and particularly vision, because vision takes up a major portion of our brain's energy. And when you use your vision, you are absorbing a great deal of not just information, but also things that can be challenging to your emotions. And you could be absorbing things that are good for your emotions. Like if you watch a really sad movie, but it's one of these really sweet movies and you can cry with them and but when you're watching news right now, it's very charged. So I highly recommend that you try to limit how much you are absorbing, how much you're exposing yourself to. I think it's very important to expose yourself to some, because you need to know what's going on. It's not an absolute, but it needs to be limited. And if you can, try to cut back on how many senses you're using to do it. It's less disruptive to the nervous system to read than it is to watch something on television. And it's less disruptive to the nervous system to listen than it is to see it and listen to it. Okay. And it's less disruptive if you turn the volume off and you only see it. Just cut back on the number of senses that are involved in it. So that was good thinking. Thank you for mentioning that.
I'm listening to music.
Yeah, I'm listening to music, and then actually that's a wonderful thing to you. If you use your stress scale, you can find out what music does for you. I actually use music a lot in my work as a martial arts instructor and a self-defense instructor. I turn on the boom, boom, boom kind of music when I'm on my way to teaching a class because I want to bring my energy level up. And I listen to very soft, beautiful. I even have like 2 different playlists. So, you know, soft, beautiful music when I'm driving home because I want to bring it down. And if you're a person who loves music, you are probably deeply affected by it. Not everybody is, by the way, but music is a really good, and then you follow, what should I listen to? It depends on how it makes you feel. That's rather than choosing it by what you enjoy, choose it by what you enjoy and how it makes you feel.
Singing or performing is even better than listening to it.
Wow, if you're performing music, then that involves a lot of things, right? You're using your eyes to follow the music. You are using your body. You're moving. You're working on your breathing. If you're performing with other people, you're balancing all that out. I can't imagine that it would be easy for somebody singing in a choir to be able to be stressed out at the same time. Now, we know that choirs, I've been in a few choirs, and we don't just sing. So it's the in-betweens we can get totally stressed out. But while we're singing, so yeah, and those of you who sing in the shower, and no matter who complains, singing in the shower is a great idea. Shower is a great, for me, it's a wonderful way to, it's like my happiest moment of the day because it's such a wonderful feeling. And that is a moment of mindfulness. So I think giving yourself a moment of mindfulness every day. I'm not saying be mindful all day, forget it. Nobody's mindful all day. But if you can get in touch with something that you really love, that feels good to you, and that you have easy access to. And in particular, when I like showering, because if the choice is between showering and eating brownies, I'm better off having a shower. Although eating brownies will do it for me, but I will regret that later on. So seek out. That's the other thing, is to seek out the things that and then be in those things. I learned from my first meditation teacher that you should. He used to say, when you're in the shower, be in the shower. I love being in the shower, and yet some of the time when I'm in the shower, I'm like thinking about clients that I have and planning lunch and what am I going to make for Shabbat, and then I go, oh no, I forgot, I'm supposed to be in the shower now. I try not to bring my clients in the shower with me anymore. So I suggest you just, yeah. So if you have other things that you do, some people garden and they find that very meditative. Yes, Stephen, but you'll need to turn your microphone on.
Right. I was going to say that I think generally in any kind of crisis situation, and particularly in this past few weeks, I sort of say to myself, I refuse to allow the enemy to dictate the order of my day, and I will do exactly what I need to do when I need to do it, and that gives me a feeling of control, and which is what they're trying to take away from me.
Now that is being able to give back a sense of control is a lot of what we're doing when I talk about that window of tolerance and trying to help people get back into that place. Giving yourself a sense of control. Now I'm like Stephen. I'm the one who'll drive to Ashkelon if that's what I decided to do, and I don't care what they're doing. But not everybody feels like that. But you can do it in smaller ways. Trying to maintain some kind of a routine, but you can be reasonably cautious rather than being if you can be reasonably cautious rather than being afraid, and you don't have to do it with everything. Even if you're very nervous, pick one thing that you're going to do because they can't stop you from doing it. Maybe it means just stepping outside to get the paper or the mail. And where you've been nervous about that, and maybe you've been hesitating about that, saying, all right, that's the thing I'm going to do. And maybe you'll pick the time of day when they haven't been shooting in this direction. Whatever it is, but a little bit of defiance can actually help you get a sense of control.
It actually happened today when I got an SMS that I had to go and pick something up from the corner shop, something that I'd ordered. And I said, wow, I better go and do it now because I want it right now. So I left the building. And since I stepped foot outside the building, I heard these enormous bangs all over the place. I thought, whoops. So I walked. I didn't sort of run. I walked back into the building and checked to see where the bangs were coming from on my app. And it seemed to be coming from far enough away and no sirens had gone off. So I thought, right, I'm not going to sit here and wait and go back home. I'm going to get what I want to go and get. So I went and got it.
Okay.
And just, the chance of anything happening was really small. If the siren goes off, I dive into somebody else's building. So I felt that I took control, and for me, that's extremely satisfying and relaxing. Well, not relaxing is not a word. What we're saying, reduce the stress reducing.
Because you're not feeling quite so closed in. You're not being controlled by what's happening around you. You're taking initiative and you're able to make some choices. Making choices is one of the things that when I'm working with people, that's one of the things we're trying to get them to do. If you're having trouble making decisions, congratulations, you are in there with the rest of us. But so that's not something to give yourself a hard time about right now. But what you can do is you can use some of these techniques to help bring down the stress level, and that can help you. That might be able to help you make decisions, and you can decide. Another thing that we say during a period of time like this is try not to make major life decisions right now, because there are too many factors that you don't have. That your decision module is busy. Okay, so this is not the time. This is not the time to propose to your intended. And it's not the time to get a dog, although I have to tell you, I really love having a dog in the miklat with me. He's the mamad. He's learned. He howls at the sirens, and once he's in here with us, he's fine. So, if you really want to get a dog, but who was I talking to the other day? Who was somebody who was really stressed out and thinking of getting a divorce, and I said, that might be a good idea. That might not be a good idea. You're not going to know right now because there's too many things happening. And there'll be a time when you'll be able to really sit down and look at that. But right now is not the time. Okay, major investments. This is not the best time. What else? I wanted to talk. Yes. Does everybody know? Does everybody know about, you guys know about the app, right? The app, I have Kumta, my husband has, okay, so there's an app you can have on your phone that lets you know when the sirens are going off, okay? If you have that, if you don't have that app, I find it actually quite helpful. It helps me kind of figure out what's going on. I have a way to find out without having to go through all the news and to start getting nervous about, well, I wonder if anything's happening. The negative side of that is you need to go through the settings because you do not want it ringing every time they shoot something, every time they shoot something at Ashkelon or at wherever else they're always shooting at, on the Otef, okay? That's not something, you can't be jangling your nervous system that way where there's nothing for you to do about it. However, you can set it so that it's keeping track of where you are, and it'll let you know about whatever's around you. And you can also set it so it's only like one city. You can put Rehovot in there and it won't, and unless Rehovot the siren goes off, it'll stay quiet. But if you want to know what happened someplace else, you can scroll it and see. Okay, so if anybody's using this, please consider really going into the settings. By the way, the sounds that they make also change it. Some of the sounds are almost worse than the sirens. So, yes, Colin, if you're talking to us, you need to turn on your microphone.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the app.
Oh, there's one called Red Alert, but it has a combination name. It's Kumta, which is the hat that the soldiers wear, those beanie things that they wear. Beret. Thank you. I used to speak English. Now I speak Hebrew.
Ian, I think you had a question, didn't you?
Well, not really a question. I mean, I would question the use of any sort of app, to be absolutely honest with you. I think it can only increase a person's stress. As far as I'm concerned, why do I need an app to hear a siren when it's relevant to me? You know, but
Well, I'll tell you,
I did want to.
I'll tell you why, because
I did
in
want
some
to share
places
with
you can't hear the siren, and the other thing is that the app alerts you sometimes before the
Okay,
siren.
well, here we can hear the siren. But I wanted to share with you my preferred method of alleviating stress, which is
Whiskey.
all right, so let's talk
L'chaim.
about, first of all, if you're going to
Good
drink,
idea.
if you're going to drink something good. I mean, yeah,
I'd
it's
just
really,
like to add to Ian, where we are, we often hear the sirens distant in Gadara, in especially in Ashdod, Yavna. It helps that with the grandkids, they know unless they hear it on the phone, not to worry about it, because they hear it in the distance and they're already getting panicky.
Yeah, I suppose that's true around there.
because I do go out, like I'll go out on calls and so on. I have mine set on my geographic location, and I don't have to keep changing it, so that when I was driving down to where was that? There's a place called Dream Island. Did anybody, but I never heard of it. Has anyone else ever heard of it? It's a resort hotel. It's like it's about as south as you can go and still be in the Shvela. But in any case, that's where we were. And I leave mine on the geographic location because that way I don't have to think about it. I don't know where all the sirens are. But if you're at home, and you know that they're a reasonable volume, whatever, there's no reason to do that. You're right. You don't have to double up on it. But if you're on the move, it can be helpful. And it's you could be somewhere in the house. Like I know that there's one room in my house where I don't hear the siren quite so well. And if I have this in my pocket, I don't have to worry about it.
Can I
You know
just
what? I would say it's more important to think about how you feel about it than it is whether you actually need it because as a practical matter, the chances of any particular person on here actually experiencing a resisim, shrapnel, or which is more likely to happen than actually getting hit by one of the missiles because So statistically your chances are very low that you're actually going to suffer from something. But it would be foolish to say that your chances were zero. And what is definitely true is your nervous system is constantly being stressed. So do think about if they give you a sense of confidence and control, those are good things. And if they don't, or they actually reduce that, then they're not for you.
I'd just like to add a word of warning. If you're using location or you're using Waze or any of these things, the IDF is them. Disrupting the GPS signals.
Yeah, they're jamming.
I woke up this morning and it said I'm in Beirut.
You must have been very nervous about that.
And someone posted that every night they go to Cairo. So just be careful using GPS for anything. It's don't rely on it too much. Yes,
just don't make any assumptions about where you are based on what it says.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I've got a question. In the house over the road from me, the person who owns the house is away for a few months, and she said that her house is available for anybody who needs somewhere. And a couple from the Tiva Asara have moved in there temporarily. A couple who survived in the Tiva Asara, elderly couple. And I was talking to the lady yesterday, heavily traumatized, and she told me that she had a phone call from one of the Rishuyot, I can't remember which one, offering her psychological counseling over the telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she refused it. She said that she can't see any way in which it would be helpful over the phone. And she knows that she needs it, but she also felt that it had to be person to person. So my question is that something in the knowledge about the difference between person-to-person counselling, telephone counselling, which was throughout Corona, people had telephone counselling all the time, didn't they?
Yeah, well, listen, we are designed on purpose to respond to each other at a relatively short distance. We're a social species, and we get a lot of information from being right by each other. You're not just seeing. You're first of all, seeing is more powerful than hearing generally, and it may be that this woman in particular knows that she's not particularly auditory. That's for some people that's a very good channel to go. She's going to have a really hard time if she wants to try to find counseling, person-to-person counseling right now, because all of the I can't say all, but every therapist I know is swamped.
Of course, but not enough.
Now that may ease off over time, but first of all, she could ask to see if they can could they do it over the video, even if she used let her try it over WhatsApp so she can see the other person. That might be more helpful. I do therapy over Zoom for people in the United States on a regular basis. And I think a lot of it has to do with how your brain is wired, because for me, when I see people on Zoom, I read them, my nervous system reads them as people. Whereas for some people, they read them as images. And if that's how you respond, then, everybody's different. And we're addressing the nervous system. She's across the street from you?
Yeah,
we
can suggest.
Talk to me about that.
I'll say, we can do it. I'll suggest that.
Because often, we're not talking necessarily about years of counseling. It sounds like she's having an acute stress. She's in the acute stress, going from the response part to but she's also a refugee, so she's responding to that. She's a
survivor, and she's also got survivor's guilt.
Yeah. They don't understand why they were left alone when all their neighbors were killed.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we're working with a lot of people. I know our unit is we've been very, very busy up until now, and we're and she can ask for intervention, but it'll almost certainly be by telephone. But she could ask to see whether she could. It might work better if she can see the person.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I'll see. I'll tell her tomorrow.
Who is raising their hand over here on the right-hand side of my screen? You don't know where you are.
Colin was, but now he's disappeared.
Maybe he was saying goodbye.
Come back. Maybe he wanted to say he had to go.
Yeah, maybe.
Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Any questions? Any experiences? Any traumas? No? Okay.
How about how are people here have soldiers in the field, right? How do they sound? How are they? Oh, I see Stephen with his finger up. You have a soldier in the field? Yeah, your microphone is off, so I can't hear you.
Yes. He's down south waiting for the go ahead. And he came out today, saw the family, and I'm babysitting, so he could take his wife out for a coffee. And he seems fine, but I know that he's seen things that you see a lot on movies, but in this particular case, it wasn't a movie. And I sort of spoke to him about it a little bit, and he said it was, you have to pinch yourself to believe that you're really seeing the real thing, as opposed to some sort of movie set. Driving down, seeing bodies and cars burnt out and all the rest of it. Plus, he had to even do more because he said the Akka were so swamped with what they had to do. Is it Akka? Right, Zaka. Sorry.
Yes, Zaka.
Zaka, right. So as a paramedic,
Zaka is. Yeah,
Zaka go in and actually do well. I don't know exactly what. They're not like the. They're putting the pieces together, shall we say, so that
collect the body parts.
Collect the body parts.
Zaka deals with, I see Zaka people almost all the time when I'm in the field. They work with anybody who's passed away, pretty much to kind of make sure that things are handled as respectfully as they can be.
Right,
And a lot of those people are right now, I just saw today an advertisement. They're trying to hire therapists because those guys they need to talk through what they saw. And many of the people who your kids or your grandkids are going to see things that human beings are not supposed to see.
Yeah.
And right now they can't deal with that because they need to function. So
well, my son said that they had 2 or 3 evenings of sessions, and that was like caught immediately. If you're talking about the first 3 days, so it was dealt with immediately, and it seems the army are onto this kind of thing. He says, "Don't worry, Abba. The army really seems to be knowing what they're doing in this respect, and they weren't ignored."
They also train the soldiers to do some of these techniques that I've been taught. They train them to do it for each other. In particular, they teach the commanders, the MPs, because people can freeze, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's their nervous system responding in a certain way, and if you handle it the way you need to handle it, they can come back. It's a normal response to an abnormal situation. And there are things you can do. So that's one of the things. I actually developed a system we have a system here in Israel and they call it Maaseh, which is the basic, how do you deal with somebody who's experiencing traumatic stress? For instance, you're walking down the street and you hear a siren go off and you're starting to walk toward a miklat, you're fine. And you see some guy standing there in the middle of the street and he's just standing there looking totally confused. That can happen. And there are ways of approaching that person to be able to get them out of that freeze so that they can get to safety. So I actually developed an English language version of it that's easy to remember because it's based on the word CATS, C-A-T-S. Yes, I promised Joe I was going to send it to her, and I kept going to my computer to send it to her, and then I didn't. I actually made little bookmarks. See those? And but I'm not teaching that to you now, but I can tell you that basically a person who's experiencing these things, they're experiencing isolation. So the first thing you want to do is connect with them. You want to say, "Hi, I'm Eve, I'm Linda, I'm Valerie, whoever, whatever." And you say, I'm gonna stay with you until you're feeling better, or until somebody else comes to help. Okay, so they know you're there, and then they're confused. So what do you want to do when somebody's confused? You don't ask them about how they feel. You start asking them questions that require them to think, because you're trying to turn on the prefrontal cortex. So you ask them their name. You can ask them where they live. You can ask them, whatever questions that require, do you know where the miklat is? Do you anything, so that something that requires them to give an answer, but you try to move toward questions that have not just yes, no questions, things that require this part of the brain to start working, like when I tell you to move forward and you actually have to move back. That requires much more brain power, and that's what you want. People tend to experience a sense of helplessness. And so the T in CATS is task. You want to give them something to do. And so when I was called into a place, Bitachon Kihilati, here in Rehovot, they set up all kinds of programs in the different miklatim for kids, and they're setting them for adults so people can come and get. So I was there and they told me, well, you come because sometimes people come in here and they're traumatized. And I was there. I didn't see anybody traumatized. They were packing things and sorting things and making decisions and deciding how they were going to distribute things and planning programs. And I said, these are the least likely people to remain in a traumatic state because they're doing something, and what they're doing has significance. And they're helping somebody else, which is even bigger. So that's one of the best things that you can do. And you don't have to do it on a major scale. I mean, if you know somebody like your across the street neighbor who's all traumatized and you can't necessarily deal with that, even if you just, you make a quick call to see if they'd be, how they're doing, or you leave, you bring them some cookies, or that is incredibly healing for you. And it doesn't hurt them either, unless they're really bad cookies. And then the last one, we're dealing with disorientation. So what you want to do is you want to help them. You want to help them stabilize, and the way you do that is by helping them build their story. And their story is their story of their experience during this trauma, which is what they were doing probably, Stephen, in your son's pluga. They were probably doing that. What they do is they have everybody tell, where were you when this happened? Where were you? What did you see? What they're doing by doing that is they're building a story of the pluga and what the pluga experienced and how different people saw it from different angles. And that can be very healing. So that's one of the things we do. Now, and not only that, but there's one more part of that that's very important. And that is that when we remember things and they're hurtful to us, we tend to only remember negatives. The reason we only remember negatives is because our nervous system is designed that way, because negatives are more important than positives from our nervous system's perspective. Because that's because of survival. It's the negative things. It's the things that might be dangerous are the things you need to remember, because that could be dangerous for you. When it comes to positive things, we need to make an effort. Otherwise, you tend to let those things slip. And when somebody has been through a terrible experience, one of the things that you want to do is, Mr. Rogers, said, look for the helpers. When he said, when you're faced with a horrible experience like the one we're dealing with now, you want to look for the helpers. Who's doing good? Who stepped up? Who went, did wonderful things. They don't have to be war heroes. The ones who just, there are so many wonderful stories like that. By the way, if you're going to follow stories on the war, make sure you follow those stories, because they balance off the other ones. So looking for the helpers, you're also going to be looking for the helper in that person's story. Like I'll talk to somebody and they'll tell me what a terrible thing happened. And it turns out that they did so many things right, but they weren't paying attention to that. And then I closed the door. Well, that was a really smart thing to do. Yeah, but it didn't work, but it was a really smart thing to do. But they broke through. Oh, well, then I put, and then I struggled, but then they were able, oh, you struggled, you fought back, look at in this really, you fought back. That's amazing. You tried to protect somebody. You stopped your car and picked somebody up. You saw somebody who couldn't get themselves to the miklat, and you took a few seconds to help them get there. A kid dropped their teddy bear and you picked it up for them. Those are the things that are very hard to remember when you're under stress and you're dealing with traumatic situations. And therefore, it's really important, if you're helping somebody, listening to their story, to point out to them all the things, as many of the things as you can, that they did right, because they won't necessarily notice it, even though they told you. And then, by the way, that applies to us too. So it's really important, if you don't have a gratefulness practice, again, I don't know if you'll do it for yourselves, but if you can't do it for yourself, do it for someone else. Do it for your spouse, do it for your child, do it for the kid in the army. Say to them, can you name 3 things you're grateful for today? And sometimes it seems like it's going to be a struggle, and then it's amazing how fast you'll find them. And it reminds you that's part of our experience too. I'm grateful that you invited me.
We're thankful that we invited you. Thank you so much. I mean, I think this has been really helpful. Stephen wants to say something. Stephen.
Yes, he does.
Well, I have a question, if I'm allowed to ask questions. I'm not sure that you'll be able to answer
I'll just
me.
refuse to answer. I'll be like a politician.
It might be outside the scope of your expertise, but it occurred to me that we're all basically, anybody Jewish alive today has somehow survived the past 2,000 years of terrible history. And I'm wondering, is there any cultural connection at all with the way people handle this kind of stress? Because you're used to being in Israel, but you were in Ukraine. Could you see any differences?
Well, I haven't dealt with refugees here. I suspect it's very similar. I suspect that families, I mean, I don't think that I wasn't dealing with many people who had people who had been killed, who were gone. I dealt with a lot of women with children and grandparents who had a male member of the family who had to stay in Ukraine to fight in the army. So there was an enormous sense of loss there. But so that I think that's a difference. Culturally, I expect there's a difference. I have to say that one of the things I really love about, I mean, we've been through so much as a people. We have a wonderful dark sense of humor. So I appreciate the humor as long as it's not at someone else's expense too much. I think the other thing I went to a seminar. I went via Zoom. See, I told you, I feel like I'm really there. And there was a speaker, and she said something that was really important to me. She talked about how we are surrounded by our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents. They're surrounding us now because all the generations have been through so much, and they survived somehow. If they hadn't, we wouldn't be here. And they're sending that spirit to us. They're with us, and they're willing us to keep moving forward so that we can take that spirit and be there for our children and their children and their children's children. We can be there for them too. So that was very moving to me.
Wow, thank you for that. Thank you for that. It reminded me of I listened to a lecture by Professor Michael Goodman, and he said that what's happened to us as a people is that our ancestors who suffered the pogroms have knocked us on the shoulders and say, hello.
That's right. I have been thinking of my great-grandmother was the one who left the Ukraine and came to the United States where she was safe. And she talked a lot about how much she loved I mean, I never met her, but she talked a lot about how much she loved. It was Russia at that time. She spoke Yiddish and Russian or whatever. And when I was working with refugees they were coming right out of that Odessa. They were coming out of the area where she lived. And I felt that sense of history. And now I feel the other side of the sense of history of all those people who went through the pogroms that have happened for so many years. And, you know, we're sort of living it, and we somehow need to do what they did, which is move forward, insist on being moral, good people, and help our families do that, and our neighbors.
Right. Well, that's a good note to finish on, I think. So thank you again. It's been wonderful. I'm sure we'll take a lot away with us. Just want to remind you all again, for those who haven't, that this is to raise funds for Hatzalah. So if you'd like to give a donation, that would be great.
I will send out to everyone the payment details again.
I'll make up one short plug for Hatzalah. We just had Natan Bennett went to visit our command center, and he actually was the one he was saying that the reason Hatzalah was in there amongst the first to get there, and many of the other emergency services were not able to get in as fast because they're not volunteer organizations with people all over the country. So they weren't able to move as fast. They have a much bigger bureaucracy. They had to kind of get organized, and we didn't have to do that. And that's because of our volunteers. So that I sat down and worked with one volunteer who was there really early on, pulling people, getting people out, putting, 13 people in an ambulance to just get them out of there so that they could get some medical treatment. Follow the helpers, because that's where the magic is.
Thank you. Joe, yes, you want to say something?
I just wanted to ask Jill to send us the slides, because I think there's some good reminders for everybody in there.
I will send you the slides, but I will also send you the cats.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So Jill, send them to me. And
That's okay, but not dogs.
You send the cats to me because you promised.
Okay, I'll do it. I'm going to have to write myself a note because I think I'm totally burned out tonight.
Okay, so goodbye everybody, and as many of you as possible tune in on November the 4th for Professor Newman's lecture about Gaza and its borders.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a quiet night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Ah.